discussion on digital ecosystems. Real ecosystems are all about the interaction of organisms and the dependency of organisms upon one another, and digital ecosystems are no different. We also interact with other systems, other data, and other organizations. And today we'll be exploring those interactions, about standards, about relationships, about technologies in which we interact and depend on one another. I'm really excited about this. My background is a geologist. I work at Fugro. And as a geologist, I've always been very excited about getting more out of data by the combination and making the information, getting information under your fingertips. And I think digital ecosystems are a fantastic tool to take the next step for our energy industry. Within Fugro, I digitalize the site characterization data, so seismic and borehole and in situ data for shallow subsurface. And in that role, I'd like to add some value, maybe hopefully by moderating this exciting session. But a few things that you are able to ask questions. The session will only get better the more questions are asked from the audience, and so use the chat, the Q&A button to ask questions, please. That will be much more valuable and interesting for everyone. So without further ado, I'd like to start the session and let the panelists introduce themselves, starting with Andreas. So Andreas, if you could maybe do a brief introduction of yourself to the audience.
Sure, thank you, Martin, for the introduction. So, yeah, my name is Andreas Blumauer. I'm the CEO and one of the 3 founders of Semantic Web Company. It's a company which has been around for 15 years now, roundabout. As the name says, we are very much dedicated to use standards to describe data, which are the semantic web standards of W3C, the World Wide Web Consortium. And the very first years were quite experimental, but since around 5 years or so, there's quite a huge trend in different industries and also in the energy industry towards using knowledge graphs. So knowledge graphs are one of the big, let's say, topics in the area of graph technologies in general. There are graph databases which are more and more used to do data integration, to do knowledge discovery, to operate text mining on top, so we can deal with unstructured data much better than ever before. And what we want to solve actually is quite a big problem we've seen in the energy industry frequently, which is centered around messy data. So data which has a lot of noise in it, unstructured data, text, documents, of course. Dealing with structured data is, of course, quite nicely feasible with relational databases. That's clear, or XML. We have those technologies. But what happens if we want to link the unstructured with the structured part, which then really kind of produces more knowledge on top? So the philosophy behind the semantic web is, if you link all the different data sources and the let's say little chunks of information which reside in all these different silos into one knowledge graph, then you can start to more analytics, to do analytics on top of unstructured data. Also with using controlled vocabularies and ontologies, you can access the data in a very standardized way. And this is what we've been dealing with for 15 years. 10 years ago, our product came to the market, which is the Pool Party Semantic Suite, which is in the meantime one of the world leaders in the knowledge graph management space. So I'm happy to be part of this panel today. And I'm also keen on learning about ongoing discussions in this industry and see how knowledge graphs potentially could solve those. So that was the short intro from my side. Thank you very much.
My name is Ali Al-Mujani, and I've founded Target in 2005, which is about 15 years ago. So almost same time as Andreas started his company. I've been in the industry for 25 years, and I have been working on digital since probably before joining the industry. So digital is not new to the industry. And I think digital transformation is not probably necessarily the right word for the industry, because I don't remember actually doing anything handwritten since I joined the industry. So but more of integration and communication, integrating and communicating all the different silos that the organizations have spent millions and billions actually building, the knowledge that has been acquired, the processes that have been integrated, and how to actually get all the different components and parameters that the and any E&B organization works on, which, as we define as the ecosystem, kind of talk to each other, I think is the biggest problem right now. And I think with the transformation of that took place in the social arena of activity of our lives, there is a lot to be extrapolated and to be implemented in our industry. So it's not just so much to go digital, but it's to go digitally connected and connecting all the information, all the data, and really replumb our industry so data and information are actually structured properly, consumed properly, and consumed through a proper governance framework that actually adhere to all different end user environments. So at Target, we have been working for the last 6 to 7 years on building a truly, cloud native environment that is, fully microservices architected, that would allow any organization to agnostically deploy solutions, whether it's on a multi-cloud, private cloud, hybrid cloud, and connect their existing solutions and actually build value and workflows on top of that. Thank you.
My name is Jamie Cruz. I work at Schlumberger. I'm the head of products for data management at Schlumberger. I also serve on the board of directors for PPDM, which is an industry standards organization around data. And I'm also Schlumberger's focal point for the Open Subsurface Data Universe, which is an exciting new industry forum for developing a digital data ecosystem to improve collaboration and working. I've been working in the industry as a technologist and manager for about 25 years now. In that time, we've been looking and developing as an industry about how we can better take advantage, connect, and store and manage more cost effectively and more efficiently our digital assets and improve collaboration. I'm obviously very excited about the developments that happened in the last couple of years, particularly around subsurface with the OSDU, but also how that digital ecosystem thinking and strategies can apply beyond subsurface to drilling and well construction, production, and even into new domains like new energy. And I'm also interested in how the digital ecosystems change the relationships between some of the players. We see some new entrants coming into the market in terms of cloud service providers, new opportunities for ISVs, and obviously closer working relationships between operators and technology vendors. So I see the ecosystem really not just as a collection of technology, but as a collection of new ways of working, of new types of collaboration between different stakeholders, and really something that we can use to kickstart the next generation of activity in our industry, especially as we're facing so much disruptive change from the outside. So those are the areas that I'm really interested in, and and I'm looking forward to discussing those matters. From a Schlumberger perspective, we like to think that we've shown some leadership around digital ecosystems. We don't see digital ecosystems limited to just data management, but we see really the combination of data as a service, data technology, as a way of accelerating the workflows of our decision makers. So digital transformation for us is bringing all these things together and trying to improve our business outputs through accelerating our digital workflows. So we're as much interested in how we can accelerate application workflows and build the next generation of applications on top of data platforms, as well as the data platforms themselves. And we have a lot of new exciting technology we've been delivering under our Delphi program, as well as the fully open source contribution that we made of our Delphi data ecosystem to the OSDU forum. So we feel that we're all in on digital ecosystems, we're all in on the open source side of it, and we're really looking forward to talking about how those things can move our industry forward.
Thank you all. Thanks for the introduction and bringing up some of the considerations. We are missing, probably due to technical issues, one panelist, that is Stacy Lusk. She may be joining us later from Microsoft, and at that time we will introduce her. So let's Jamie, you touched upon the OSDU data platform. How do you think that data platform, that standard platform for data formatting and exchanging is changing the ecosystem in upstream?
Okay, so I think what's really interesting about the OSDU forum is that for the first time in the 25 years that I've been working on data, we're seeing the industry come together and say, hey, can we do something together at the foundation level? Instead of competing on databases and data services, can we come together and collaborate to create not just a standard, but actually an executable environment that we can build our next generation of products on? So I think that that's going to be very exciting for the industry to be thinking about what opportunities that provides. It will save us having to spend monies as individual companies. It will save customers building silos from different vendors that are associated with the application portfolio they've chosen. And it means that we should also be able to adopt technology much more rapidly around data. So that whole idea that there's a non-competitive part of our data ecosystem should really accelerate innovation and allow us to take a big step forward and break away from the slightly siloized model, which created artificial barriers to workflow acceleration in the past. So really exciting.
All right, thanks for that. So let's hope that that happens, and there will be some challenges related to that non-competitiveness, I'm sure. Then the OSDU is an example of a very structured database, if I can call it that way, in which data is well organized and accessible. Andreas, what about the next generation data integration and use of less structured database, the less structured data? How should we deal with that?
Yeah, it's really about metadata. So I think more and more companies have started to understand how important active metadata has become. Active metadata is a notion which has been developed by Gartner, the analyst firm, and is quite interesting to take a look at what active metadata means. It's metadata which is generated automatically, more or less, by means of machine learning, partly, but also by means of using knowledge graphs, which you can imagine as kind of controlled vocabularies, business objects organized in a very structured way, actually representing your business objects, the relations in between and such. And what we've learned is that with a combination of machine learning and knowledge graphs, you can achieve really good results, especially when it comes to unstructured data. So all these NLP technologies have done a great job, basically when using statistics and corpus statistics and also machine learning. But with knowledge graphs in the mix, now we reach new levels of precision.
Yeah, and have the knowledge graphs already arrived in the oil and gas industry, or is that still outside of our geodata industry?
No, it has arrived. So actually, we've been working with all of the rather big oil companies, also with Schlumberger, by the way, on such projects. So maybe Jamie, you can talk a little bit more about how that is related, how knowledge graphs are related to your approaches. I'm pretty sure you can also talk about that a little bit. No, it's here. So the oil and gas companies have absolutely seen the value in different, also when it comes to, let's say, knowledge management processes, when it comes to learning from the past. Yeah, what can we learn from past projects? How can we improve our risk mitigation? But also there are lots of standards in the meantime where graph technologies then can translate them into ways to extract meaning from unstructured data. I would not say it's mainstream yet, that's I have to admit, but we are also not anymore in the early adopter phase. So it's what typically is called early maturity. And I would say energy industry is kind of quite in a good shape. So there are other industries which are lacking behind, others are really at the forefront, like pharmaceutical industries has adopted crafts heavily. So
okay, that's fantastic to hear that those technologies don't only live in the Googles of this world.
No.
We've touched upon the structured database of OSDU. We talked about active metadata and knowledge graphs, but there's a different topic also that's important. And Ali, maybe you can say something about that. It's about when we go to these more open systems or ecosystems. How do we securely govern and control that data with regards to data sovereignty or access control? What are the challenges there?
Let us step back a little bit and realize that the industry, as I mentioned earlier, has been working on building digital solutions for as long as we remember. So it's not that we will just go into an organization and they would have nothing. Another important parameter in here is that each operator, and that is for the majority of the world, would operate in jurisdictions which have certain laws and certain requirements, where an operator, an oil and gas operator, an energy operator would have to abide to and respect. Also, we are in the age of an inclusive economy, where the mesh of an organization, in this case we would refer to as the digital mesh, is quite wide. It goes to government organizations, to regulators, to suppliers who are local, who are outside. So this goes beyond just having a data system. Governance, by all means, it's not just data governance. Governance has to be an inherently key component in establishing an ecosystem, a digital ecosystem. And for that means it is an opportunity for organizations to start actually enforcing compliance through building a proper governance framework. So when we look at building something new, or let's say complementing what has been existing, we look at the ability of connecting your different data stores, different applications, but the framework of governance comes at a critical value add. In addition to that, the data sovereignty is something that is a super critical item. Lots of organizations have been, let's say, not slow, but not able to actually go and deploy cloud, because cloud systems have not been in the past built on agnostic systems where organizations need to actually deploy this at a local level. You know, when I say local, it doesn't have to be within the organization itself, but it could be within the bound of the country, of the geographical jurisdiction where they can actually store these data and be able to run them. So having an ecosystem that will actually encompass all these components or these parameters is super critical. And therefore, solutions and a private ecosystem will have to actually have the attributes of being able to actually be open to connect to different systems locally, internationally, and actually have a critical data governance, access control layer that is highly configurable by the organization itself.
Are there already examples in place in our industry in which we can govern and control the data sovereignty in an, let's say, more open architecture?
Yes, we actually have deployed a number of solutions of this nature. Here in Oman, we have been running the full energy sector in collaboration with the Ministry of Energy, which was called Ministry of Oil and Gas. And we have all the operators actually are members of this environment. And this goes beyond the subsurface environment, which was referred to as NDR in the past. But we have the full business information, the full business life cycle planning, economics, reserves, production, and now we've gone into drilling and other areas. And we have enabled also access of partners from different jurisdictions and locations through one single ecosystem. We have integrated data are actually fetched on a fairly controlled basis. And this is all within one single shared platform that is owned and operated by, in conjunction with the regulator in this case. So there are a number of examples. That's a single example. We have another example in the downstream industry where we have, refinery and fuel transporter actually operating one single system for managing fuel transport and managing the refined products, the transportation system. And we have the major marketing organizations actually coming online and monitoring their activities. So this is the inclusiveness and openness that an ecosystem should be able to provide, for the future.
Some questions from the audience. A question for you, Andreas. You talked about extracting metadata from let's say less structured or unstructured subsurface data, and there's a question whether you could give any concrete examples of where data such as handwritten core descriptions, for instance, or drilling reports have been extracted for metadata.
Well, this is a little bit under NDA. I cannot talk very much about it. As you can imagine, those companies working with the technology also try to stay a little bit ahead of the competition here. But the system as used is quite, let's say, simple. You need a high quality knowledge graph describing entities, categories of your subdomain or of your specific domain. Of course, the next question is, where do we get it from? Are they available on the World Wide Web? Parts of that is available, yes, but there are also tools to generate the graphs kind of semi-automatically from text. That's based on machine learning algorithms. And then you use that together with other machine learning algorithms to extract entities and put them into hierarchies and into classification systems. And that helps instantly to have better access to unstructured data. And I'm sure you know which documents I'm talking about in different areas of your industry. You have a lot of such quite noisy data we've seen, which is great input for our technology. it's interesting to us still to see that it's still a bit reluctancy seen. So why not the adoption rate is that high? I would say it has something to do with this knowledge graph thing. So how can we ever govern the knowledge graph? How can we build that? We do not have the skills. We don't know if the technology is mature enough. So this is still the hurdle to take. And I would really suggest to run more experiments with this kind of technology. Try them out, make use of them. It needs a bit of a training phase, maybe a couple of months, but then you will see, you will get quickly a lot of powerful mechanism to better treat your unstructured and messy data. Go ahead. One public example I would also like to mention is you can go to the Geological Survey of Austria. They've built quite a large knowledge graph in the area of lithology. I know it's not exactly what oil and gas companies are looking for, but it's very related to your business. And you will see how things can be exposed and can be used also for entity extraction. So that's a publicly available knowledge graph you can download and use for text mining, for instance.
Okay, thank you, Andreas. So we should start experimenting, start doing, and stop talking.
Exactly.
Another question from the audience is around the energy transition and how our let's say a fossil fuel orientated digital ecosystems can contribute to the energy transition and so expand the collaboration outside of the E&P industry and maybe more towards other energy industries. Jamie, is that something with your thinking about the open source, the value of that you can comment on?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think one of the things to observe about the new digital data platforms that we're working on, they're very flexible. So we're not baking into stone, schemas and models into the code. We're developing standard definitions for schemas and models and deploying that as part of the platform. But the platform itself can be deployed into new domains. So we start with seismic and wells now, but we've got work groups going on within the OSDU and with Schlumberger, for things like production, well construction, but also we start talking about new energy. And if you think about it, what information do we need to capture for new energy? There's lots of different areas, but we're going to be capturing measurements and readings, things like methane emissions, using some of the same structures and tools for, say, carbon capture and sequestration that we would use in reservoir simulation. So we don't have to start with a blank sheet when we talk about new energy. We can repurpose some of the models, some of the forms of collaboration. Some of the stakeholders for new energy are very much the same as the ones that are for the fossil part of the industry. So we think that the work that we're doing about building these open platforms and ecosystems can be adapted, repurposed, extended, and we can take advantage of the cost savings that we're making through collaboration and open source in subsurface, for example, and apply those to both other domains and to new energy. So we should get a real kickstart in agility from these new platforms, especially this open source thing as well, because open source is really a chance for us to contribute working code, to put resources together and do our work in the light. And that should help to make us more responsive as an industry to take on these new challenges. But again, we're dealing with new energy with lots of measured data, equipment data, and subsurface models as well. So hopefully, that will really work very nicely on top of the foundations that we're building.
That sounds very promising, Jamie. Thank you. Maybe just a quick addition from my end on that as well. We at Fugro get involved very much into the site characterization of offshore wind farms, for instance. And if you compare the activities, the ground modeling that needs to be done for a offshore wind farm versus a reservoir, there's a lot of differences, but there's also a lot of similarities. For a offshore wind farm development, we shoot energy, we shoot seismics, we drill boreholes, we take samples, we do lab tests, and there's a lot of similarities to the soil modeling for the development of these offshore wind farms versus the reservoir characterization, although it not be exactly one-on-one the same. But I would agree with Jamie that there's a lot of synergies between the two industries. Then let me just check for some further questions. But first, we touched upon the data management, the metadata, data governance. What we haven't really touched upon is let's say the relational aspects and the trust and collaboration between different parties, because having this. Our industry has been historically very protective of its data and its insight, and I was wondering whether any of the panelists would want to comment on how we cope, besides the technological aspects, cope with that level of trust or distrust between parties and the protectiveness that we've shown over the last decades in our industry. Is there anything to comment on that?
Well, for me, I think one of the really interesting parts about some of our new collaborations are the way that we've broken down some of those barriers, right? So we're seeing people collaborate in the open. We've got code being put into GitLab. We've got people from across the vendors, the ISVs, the cloud operators, all working together in tiger teams that are producing real code, in governance bodies, co-authoring documents. And I guess it's easy to be skeptical, right? You know, when somebody comes up with yet another standard or yet another initiative. I think at the beginning there was a lot of mistrust there, right? There's a lot of people saying this is just like some other previous initiative that didn't work. It's one party trying to dominate over another. But I think in the sort of 2 years or so that some of these new initiatives, particularly OSDU, have been working together, we actually see now that something like OSDU has brought together PPDM. It's brought the IOGP, it's brought Energistics together, as well as the operators. So you can see that as an industry, I think that we're focusing our attention on making these initiatives successful by putting everybody in the same room. So sure, there's still a space for competition. I mean, we need to all be able to monetize this as our organizations. But with this clear governance in these new ways of working, we can separate those parts of our business and activity where we're working in an open, transparent way, and those parts of the business that we're going to develop competitive products. And I think that's important because I think everybody doesn't want to have a homogeneous solution, one size fits all for everybody. We still want the operators still want to have their differentiated digital platforms. The vendors want to have their unique products, but now they can come together based on this common platform. So the digital ecosystems, I think, should be a spur to lower cost innovation and higher trust between the parties, which is what they do in other industries as well. That's how they create those connections.
Yeah, yeah. And do you have any, let's say, clear examples of how you managed or how you see those barriers have been taken? Those initial reservations or skeptical reactions, what would you advise people in the audience to focus on to get over these hurdles?
Contribute. It's as simple as that. I think when you actually participate, either by offering resources to contribute to the governance, the management, the direction, or even better, writing code, then I think that's when everybody realizes that collaboration is a safe thing to do, because when you're actually in there, if you're an operator, consider contributing test data or testing. I think we have other vendors on the line here. This is a forum for us to, something like OSDU, it can be a venue for developing new technologies, innovation projects as well. So I think the more we contribute and come together, like we've had to do in this digital era, right? Just come together, contribute, work together. And I think we become addicted to the progress and the velocity that we create as an industry working together. For us to go away into our silos and try and do it on our own, you lose motivation to do that quite quickly, I think, once you're a contributor.
Yeah, and Andreas or Ali, any takeaways from your end to advice for the audience to how to deal with these hurdles?
Yeah, I would like to reconfirm what Jamie just has said. So also when it comes to the question, so how to start out with a knowledge graph project, it's always to involve all the different stakeholders. And of course, typically the subject matter expert, the business users are not familiar with knowledge engineering. So how can we start a project then? And there are several techniques like card sorting, for instance, which is a really low barrier technique where you can enter that metadata space and start organizing your entities like in a card play. But of course, in the digital version, it works highly collaboratively as well. And we've seen if you start early enough to involve the decision makers in such a process, such knowledge graphs really start to grow quickly. If you do that at the very end of the project, then probably have a very big hurdle to get over that, and the POC and the pilot then will die out quickly. That's the point.
So I think one important part of the say the cloud era part of the technology is the adoption part. I think we are going through a lot of experimentation exercise right now. Whether this will actually come out as fruitful as we have mapped out as an industry, or let's say a consortium of an industry, it's all still questionable. We have yet seen a true deployments that are done outside the super majors. The super majors are only handful. The majority of the industry are smaller players that are scattered all over the globe. OSDU, although we are members of OSDU, we believe that there is going to be potential good outcome out of OSDU, but I don't think it's going to solve what the industry is going to need. It will have to be much more open than what is currently being orchestrated and has been, let's say, devised. Organizations that are in Africa and in China and in the Middle East and everywhere else outside North America will need to deploy solutions at sites. This is the reality. Okay, so we are yet to see people are still struggling to truly come up with real deployments on the cloud side to really reap the value of the cloud, of AI at the maximum potential because of the infrastructure elements that are needed to actually deploy those solutions. So I think we will need to definitely go through the I do support whatever Jamie and Andreas have been saying in terms of let's collaborate, and I think it's the effort that needs to go in there. But I think the ultimate outcome might not necessarily be just a single solution outcome of OSDU or something equivalent.
Well, thanks Ali for that. We are reaching the end of the panel discussion. We have had our fourth panelist in the audience, Stacy, who was continually experiencing connectivity issues. So she sends her apologies. She would love to join us in the panel discussion, but was unable. Thanks for joining in the audience then, Stacy. Just a quick recap. So I think what I've heard today is a number of good, tangible examples of how in the EMP industry digital ecosystem we collaborate, and I think hopefully that motivates people in the audience to lose their cynical attitude if they have it towards it. We talked about the more structured collaboration using OSDU. We talked about practical implementations of governance and data sovereignty reality that there are solutions there. We talked about working with more messy data types using knowledge graphs and the application in their industry. So I think these are a number of examples in our industry that show us that we are on the right track, and we are also on the right track to apply these technologies in this ecosystem outside of our industry towards an energy transition. So hopefully we've given everyone in the audience a bit of flavor about what we're doing and what you could do and what to focus on to get over the hurdles in this digital transformation. I'd like to end with thanking the panelists for their contributions and their preparation. So thank you all very much, and I hope we have a wonderful session next time in the digital EAGE 2021. Thank you all for attending.